All right, everybody, we're back live on Skywatchers Radio right here on the Dark Matter Radio Network and, of course, PSN Radio. Folks that I'm talking about, the guest of the evening. It's like it feels like I've never talked to you or haven't talked to you in a long, long time, but not really. Bill and Nancy Birnes, how the heck are you? Welcome to Skywatchers Radio. Nancy's been here before. Bill, I think this is your first time on my show, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It is.
And shame on me.
Welcome to all of you anyway.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so during the break, we were talking to Alan, and right. Alan is a person who has been working 120-hour weeks. Okay, that's a lot of work. Now, you are talking to three other workaholics, okay?
Right.
And probably 90% of the audience listening, but I'm a workaholic. Lord knows Angel is. He's working like 25 jobs.
Yes.
Bill
we all struggle in this realm.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to let the audience know that I wanted to quickly ask you a question before we lost you, because there was talk during the break that you might want to take a break and go to sleep because you are, in fact, a walking zombie on your feet.
Mind you, he's been drinking moonshine for the last 5 hours.
Now,
go ahead,
you can tell the difference.
No, I haven't.
No, I haven't. You can tell the difference.
Not this time, no.
Well, Nancy, what do you want to ask Alan over here?
Yeah, go ahead. Ask.
I wanted to, since Alan is the second in command here on the show, and since Alan has to sometimes...
hold on. Technically, he's the third in command. See, our overlord, Keith Rowland, is the first in command.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nobody...
I would be second, and then he'll be third.
Keith is a figment. I'm beginning to think Keith doesn't exist.
He does. He does exist.
Right now, Keith is holding up cue cards saying, "I exist." You can't see it. He doesn't talk. He just holds up cue cards.
Right in your mind. So I wanted to ask
Nancy. There's a lot going on in that mind of his. You don't want to start with that.
I wanted to ask you, Alan. Have you gotten a consistent stream of hate mail since you started the radio?
I don't know, because Angel doesn't let me read the email, so I don't know if I've gotten consistent hate mail. Have I gotten consistent hate mail, Angel?
Well, let's just say I didn't want to bruise your fragile ego.
Yeah.
Really?
No, actually, no.
Come on.
I've known. Here's the thing: we don't really give our emails out a lot. We give the Facebook page out. Everybody knows the SkywatchersRadio.com page, and
maybe I'm a little
how to
too.
Find
maybe
us.
my borders are a little too impervious or all they have to do is
permeable.
Permeable.
There you go.
Permeable. That's it. Or porous. My borders are porous. Things leak right in and out. It's terrible.
It could be
pervious.
that.
You could say pervious too.
Well, but I got 3 today saying, and I answered one of them saying, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be offensive, something like that. And then I answered the other one with something like, I got really schlonged today 3 different ways, and it's like in one case, I told this one guy, if I quit, then you'll be happy, but so far, you're going to have to be unhappy.
Well, hold on. Let me ask you the question, though. You got 3 pieces of hate mail, but were they all because of the same trigger point or different triggers?
Yeah, the same.
Okay, I got to ask, what did you do?
What's the trigger point? What
was the trigger?
The men folk.
Oh, she's the great interrupter. That's what it is, Nancy. Really?
Honestly, they shouldn't be knocking you. They really shouldn't, because, when someone has something really important to say, you could stop a midstream conversation and, stream of thought, because, you just got to throw it out there. The same times when we have people that are on here that are telling us stuff, and we're at the point where it's like, I'm sorry, I got to call Bat Squatch.
I know. And, well, see, that's the thing. We have... Sometimes I like to let a person dig a hole deeper and deeper and deeper. I have a bunch of different ways.
Women do that, by the way. Why do women do that?
Well, see, that's the thing. I think there's a couple things.
That is so wrong of you women.
Okay, and for anybody listening who agrees with these kinds of people who are good enough to write, at least, and they go into the discus on futuretheater.com, and they put this stuff. But for folks who want to hear just Bill, there's a little series about a year ago, thereabouts a year and a half ago, where Bill did the show all by himself for 3 months. So dive in. Enjoy.
By the way, what part of the country are you guys in?
Oh, that's right where you are. And that was the other thing. When you first came on this morning,
Right.
I thought perhaps you sounded like you had a cold. My daughter and her husband lived right in Jersey City, right next to where you are.
Oh,
it's
okay.
very urbanized now.
Oh, yeah. I used to live in New York about 20 years ago. I lived in the city and in Queens.
Whereabouts?
I lived in Midtown, and I lived in Kew Garden Hills and Rego Park when I was younger.
Wow.
And
So did you go to Paul Bowden High School?
No. I got kicked out of my high school. That's a whole nother story.
Wow.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
He was a rebel without a clue.
No, but okay, so you
Yeah.
have to tell us why. How do you get kicked out of high school?
Yeah, I'm intrigued. Of course, we're here to
interview Hills too. I mean, I can't believe it.
We're here to interview Bill and Nancy, but I want to hear this story. So yeah,
That's
actually,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Knowing, and I
It's
should
all
tell
the
the
same.
story. And I should tell the story. I'm from the other side of the lake in Forest Hills. So
Yeah, I sort of got caught sleeping with the rabbi's daughter.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
knowing you, I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
how old was this girl?
The right age for me at the time.
Okay.
Was it
Okay.
true love?
Good answer.
Yeah, but the joke, falling out of love is just as easy as falling in love.
Yeah.
That's romantic though. And you got okay. So what?
It's a
what
good
grade
thing
did
rabbis
you,
don't excommunicate their flock.
But Alan, did you complete high school?
Yeah, kind of, sort of, yeah.
Wow.
I scored. I got kicked out. That wasn't the real trigger, as we're saying. When I got caught, he pretty much called me out in the middle of class as a gigolo. At which point, I turned around and said to him, "But Rabbi, I didn't charge." And that's what really got me kicked out.
Well, how tall or short are you?
Depending on how well I slept, about 5'6", 5'7".
Okay, so you're a short guy.
Yeah.
I'll admit I'm altitudinally challenged.
But you're probably really cute, right?
I've got I like the way Angel says I have a face for radio.
But I have a feeling you have hair.
Actually,
I'm going to mute myself for a second.
Yeah, man.
he must be laughing his brains out right now. Actually, I do.
This is all bald radio.
Yeah, this is all bald radio.
Oh wow.
No. When I was younger, yeah, I had a nice thick head of hair, and I was I had my share of girls and women in my life, and
you did it your way.
I didn't get into, well, I got into a lot of trouble because, it's like I was the cool Jew. So, I grew up in a Orthodox community or modern Orthodox community, but because of my upbringing, I also blended into the secular world as well as the religious world.
So it's like staying alive for Jewish boys.
Yeah, I am not.
He was the John Travolta of his neighborhood. Yeah, he was.
That was a great movie, by the way, guys.
Unfortunately, that sounds a little bit accurate, except for wearing the white spandex. No, anything but that. No, not that white leisure suit.
Well, did you ever read or hear about the novel Portnoy's Complaint when you were growing up?
No, actually, I
You're way too young. You should really look into if you ever have Netflix. Do you ever do Netflix?
Sure, of course, yeah.
Type of old movies. And nowadays, I'm learning about a whole new thing that might. I've never done torrents, and I know they're. I guess are they 100% illegal? Huh?
Nancy, it's illegal, but they're awesome.
No. It's not illegal. It depends on what it is.
Well, yeah, if you're doing movies and
the
stuff
torrent
like that,
technology is not illegal.
Not illegal. Okay,
that's true. Yeah,
some of the movies that are posted on torrents are illegal, but if you go to, let's say, for example, EZTV.it, you could get every TV show that has aired for the past 10 plus years, you are able to download because you missed the episode, which is 100% legal because it was aired on public TV.
So easytv dot what?
IT. I mean, I just finished watching Defiance. I don't know if you're following that or not. I don't know if you
does
watched
it take it's kind of like I'm taking baby steps, but because we had to we've had to try to extricate ourselves from Comcast. Oh, just a little bit, not a lot, because they're still our provider for internet. But do you guys, either of you, know if there are other providers for internet, or does Comcast just blanket the area?
There are other providers, but most of them are not as good, unfortunately, when it comes to speed.
Nancy, what part of the country are you in? Where are you guys?
That's where we spend a lot of money, Nancy.
We're in a special spot, and Bill can tell you we can't get Verizon service, for example, where we are.
Wow, really? Because Verizon covers most of the country.
I know.
It does, but the place where that main switchboard, from where all these lines diverge, that switchboard is too far away for the signal to reach us.
Your demarcation point is beyond 2 miles,
right?
And you have signal degradation. Yeah, I understand. You might have to go with your local telephone network for what's their version of tripled up DSL.
Right.
If that's the only other option that you have.
Right. So anyway, I simply So
all
okay,
technical
so
talk
our
on
chat
Dark
is
Matter Radio
rebelling,
Network.
so we should change our topic.
By the way, all your episodes, by the way, are available on Easy TV.
Okay. Good.
And people download it. That's the beautiful part about it.
Yeah. And so I'm just starting to learn how insidious it is when there are monopolies, as in Comcast. And so I had to research this thing called VPN, Virtual Private Network.
Right.
Okay. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where I am, and I have a feeling once I perfect that, there's a whole world opens up. Okay.
Oh yeah. Wait till you start learning about the Tor network.
Yes, that's what I'm looking at.
That's what we call the undernet. It is the underbelly of the underbelly of the internet.
But I have read that it's like 10 or 100 times bigger than what we call the internet.
Yes.
By the way, I'm gonna agree with Skinny Bob over here. This is
boring. Yeah, Skinny Bob.
And there's a question in chat room here that I actually just want to jump into because it's actually a good question by Skinny Bob. Bill, wants to know. He wants to ask Bill if you have any comments or opinions on the Jonathan Reed case. Because after all, we are Skywatchers Radio and we are a UFO-based show. So why don't we hop into that and segue out of technical Comcast?
Well, didn't Reed admit that it was a hoax? I mean, wasn't that one of the things that he finally...
he's still... In fact, he was on some radio show recently, and he's still talking about it like it's a real thing. Yeah.
Well, now, here's the thing I want to ask all three of you guys. I'll ask the question, and you three can answer. What keeps you in this field as more and more of these hoaxes just pile up?
Well, Nancy, let me start off with asking you a question in rebuttal to before I answer that question.
Yeah.
You had a gentleman on yesterday on Future Theater by the name of James Gilliland. How do you pronounce that last name?
Gilliland.
Right, that guy. Fine gentleman, a very nice guy. Enjoyed his conversation immensely, but kind of a weird story. The Gilliland Ranch. Tell folks a little bit about what happened.
Well, let me tell
yesterday
you why I think he's a valuable guest and a valuable guest or a member of the UFO community until such time as he is officially debunked. And I believe that Rich Giordano might have been a potential debunker because he Skyped me this morning and said, I really, really think I've exposed this guy. But that's beside the point. I'd have to see what Rich has. But there's something weird going on in which people from all around the world go to his space, wherever it is, his ranch, his retreat, and they seem to see weird stuff and feel very transformed. And Rich said if you get a hold of a satellite You can get a satellite schedule, and you could basically hoax.
Remember,
hoax
actually,
your way.
we were talking about that on chat yesterday when you guys were on the air, and I mentioned that that's probably what's going on. I use different language, but I don't want to use that on air. But that's what a lot of these folks do. And look, the reason I brought him up is because we got into conversation of other folks in ufology, and I find it funny, Nancy. Going into your question, I find it funny how a lot of the folks in ufology are very volatile, and are usually at war with each other. Like, we have James over here who's at war with, Stephen Greer. He's at war with Michael Horn, and of course, or Michael the Martian.
You have no idea. We've been in another 10 years on top of your 10 years.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, I haven't hit 10 years yet. Not on this.
Okay.
It's really easy to rattle someone's cage in this community.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and also everything depends on how you come into the community. I predict if you come in trying to keep, like you've got your hat in your hand and you're being very polite and you try really, I think there's ways not to offend people, and you can come in and maybe have an easier time of it. But right now there are people who are very anti-Richard Dolan, for example. Nobody has an easy time of it. Angel has had his share of people yelling at him.
Of course.
Alan, and that's why I was wondering, Alan, you seem a little bit immune to it, and yet you're still interested in the topic.
Alan doesn't really get into it as deep as I've gotten into it, because he's really just started off his broadcasting career on this show. He hasn't been doing this for a while.
I've been in the community for a while.
But see, now Bill has it the worst. Bill has it so bad, and then he has sort of hero worship so bad that it's not good too, so...
That he does. But that goes with the territory of the stuff that Bill's covered over the years. I mean, look at the broad spectrum of things that the Bill's written about. And, of course, we're talking about Bill like he's not even in the room or even...
Right, I'm just sitting here. Don't mind me.
He's just sitting there. Like he's not even listening to us. But no, Bill, look, you started off writing stuff on John F. Kennedy, and then you've migrated over to ufology. And I'm sure you've carried over some hate from one to the other, or have carried over fans from one to the other. I mean,
well, no, I mean, 30 years ago, actually, we were writing about computers. Those were our first books. Right. And then gradually we slid into true crime. And then it was actually from true crime, from trying to pitch a story by this FBI agent to a motion picture company. That's really how I got involved with this particular topic when I met Philip Corso.
Mm-hmm. Now, was it an instant attraction to the whole UFO community, or was it something that you gradually were getting into, or were you always kind of a fan of the whole UFO topic?
Well, no, I was a fan because I'd actually followed stuff, but in terms of being an active research member of a community, no, I wasn't. But I was following stuff in the 1950s, and because in the 1950s, the stories about Roswell were very prevalent, very current, and there was a lot of talk about Roswell, and obviously that was fueled by what we now know was the reason for it, but it was fueled by all the science fiction movies of the 1950s.
Well, don't you think that people our age are kind of primed to keep thinking there will be revelation because we kind of were brought up that way?
Right, that was our...
Yeah.
I agree. That was the message that was given to us, that except in Invaders from Mars, but in terms of what the message was, is that all will be revealed. And so that's what we're all expecting.
What do you think about the really big hoaxes? Like, you didn't hear, I know you didn't have your earphones in. Before we came on, Angel was talking about this guy who's saying he's
17
just come back.
years.
The retired Marine who spent 17 years on Mars training the new colonies on Mars. 5 colonies, by the way, not one, 5 colonies, how to fight off Martians.
But why the pseudonym? Why not just be, because
Captain K.
And how is he?
I'm expecting Captain Caveman at this point.
Oonga Boonga.
Well, no, how do you spell Captain K?
Kaye.
Captain K.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, So I'm wondering, do you remember at all the Serpo incident?
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah, sure. I remember.
Well,
I know.
that was an interesting thing in that, it's one of I think it's one of the few issues we're completely sold out of now, or almost. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But,
we're totally sold out. There are no more Serpo issues.
okay, but not on this coast. On the West Coast, there are a ton.
Okay,
Really?
well, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, let's talk about Skinny Bob again here. Let's go and see. He was actually pretty prickly about the fact we were boring. So now he's got another one. Okay, so here.
Yeah, he
does Bill
does.
have any
And,
comments on Charles Hall and the Tall Whites? Charles Hall. Okay, are we talking now about that movie called Invisible Hand? Is this from Invisible Hand?
I have no idea, but he wants to know. He wants to know, or does he want to call out any current disinformation agents? Like Bill would know that. Bill, when did you become the debunker and
I am
start
not.
putting people
I
out
am.
there?
I am not the.
Yeah.
I am not the debunker in chief. In fact, I really don't follow the field that much. I mean, I'm speaking at the MUFON convention.
No way,
Next
Mr.
month.
UFO Hunter himself.
Well, no, but next month I'll be talking about why the major media doesn't cover UFO stories or any of the evidence that people uncover, why these are kind of laughed at and dismissed. And so I'll be talking there with George Knapp at the MUFON conference about
And
this.
listen, don't forget that when we were listening over the weekend to this kind of conference on new energy stuff, there's a guy there whose profession he seems to be saying he talks about that very topic. Why culture is hiding this. Do you remember that guy?
I mean, there is a justifiable reason why the powers that be are hiding this. The political and religious ramifications for a good portion of this globe would be in such upheaval with the true realization that we are not just alone in the universe.
I wonder.
But we are not as evolved and not as...
I wonder if it's just going to seep in.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, guys. And Nancy, I'm going to go back to that earlier question that you asked, and why. What keeps us involved in this field that is called ufology. Right now, is really just curiosity to see how many people are lying and how many people are hoaxing.
Oh, that's good.
To see if there is any truth to the whole matter. Because it's funny doing this more and more and doing the radio shows, listening to people's stories, and interacting with certain individuals and certain people, going back and forth in emails with certain Martian
exactly.
that we shouldn't be discussing much, but doing the stuff that I've been covering for the last 4 or 5 years, it's amazing how much the level of hoaxing has been going on for a very, very, very long time.
Well,
so
yeah,
it makes me
yeah, but
it makes
hold
me
up.
wonder. Hold on, it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder if that is why, going back to what Bill said, if that is why the mainstream kind of looks at it as a joke and doesn't really take it seriously.
Let Bill tell the story about how a hoax basically crashed his UFO hunter career, period.
Oh,
and that's why it's very significant. It's not something that happened. In other words, let Bill now put more pieces together.
Well, right, because I was told why it happened.
Yeah.
But by somebody who shall be nameless.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that happened was after the first show of season 2 was the show about these flying triangles, these triangular formations of lights in the sky, not in Phoenix, but in Illinois, in a suburb of Chicago. Tinley Park was the suburb.
Oh, I know that situation. I remember that, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So one of the things we did as part of the show was to see if the residents who'd filmed and who'd witnessed the triangular formations of lights could identify balloons, candles suspended from balloons in a rough formation. And that was how we ended that show. And after that show, a lot of people began to email us about, we could have hoaxed it because this is what you didn't do, this is what you should have done. Oh, those guys didn't see flying lights at all. Those guys were seeing the constellation Cassiopeia, which was moving across the sky that night at exactly the times when these guys were seeing lights. Okay, all that is meaningful. what happened toward the beginning of the next season, probably in January. In fact, it was in January. That these two guys set off Chinese lanterns over North Jersey, over a local Morristown airport in New Jersey, and that created a mini UFO flag. So the network suggested, why don't, I know that I'm not shipping out to California until the following day, so could I take Saturday morning, early Saturday morning, go up to Morristown with them and do like a mini episode, with the idea being, let's try to plug that into the first episode on flying triangles, because here's a current case.
Yeah, it was timeliness, right?
Right, it was timeliness. So I did that. And in the episode, we knew, because we'd been told by the police, they had determined that these were Chinese lanterns. And they were prosecuting the people. They were filing charges against the two guys who set them off. Now, so we knew that. So the conceit of that setup was, we were going to, this was my idea, we were going to plug the scientific analysis of the DVD that we got from this retired pilot up there who took a video of these things. We were going to have Terrence Masson analyze that alongside with other footage from Mark Olson up in Sonora, California. And the point was, yes, these are indeed flares. That was the point of that first episode.
No, okay.
Instead, what happened was there was a whole bunch of, they were using different cameras. The settings were all wrong.
Okay.
So we didn't.
This is when you were filming like this pre-season.
Right. When I went right
thing.
So we couldn't cut it.
It was like a pickup reel or something.
Right. So instead, the network did another episode that I suggested, which became the television show Ancient Aliens. But so that particular episode, as Nancy said, that became kind of a setup for the season, and it was never an episode. After these guys did their prank, they went to the Newark Star-Ledger, and they said, at first, they claimed that the sighting that the news had talked about, that they were the ones that did it, and that they should be interviewed. But they gave false names to MUFON. MUFON ran the IP addresses and realized these guys were hoaxing. We also knew that when we were filming this. So we knew this thing was a hoax. Well, but that episode never came to be. When these guys released their video, they went to the Newark Star-Ledger. There was a big flap. The network got very concerned. And so it was a hoax of a hoax. Nobody was hoaxed by this thing. This was supposed to go into an episode.
Who do you think encouraged these kids to do this?
Well, they weren't kids. They were adults. And because I spoke to them, and the story that I got from a person who crossed our path, who knew all about this, and who crossed our path on Long Island, said that the standard way to do things like this is that you chat up guys that are cut out. So he's not a person from an intelligence agency, but he is a cooperating individual with that intelligence agency.
You're talking about the people who did the balloons.
Yeah, somebody got to them and said, listen, why don't you guys do this? You guys should just do this. This would be great. And then
they were used like patsies almost.
And they
no, but it's also an easy way to make money and to kind of work for your government. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, anyway, that was his explanation.
It would seem to me.
What had happened.
Do you think do you think you were set up in a way?
Yeah.
Well, of course. That was the whole point of this
because
thing.
the whole thing was, after that happened, it was like poisoning the water. The show was just due to come on its third season, and there became a swell. And this is, I guess this is what I'm still reacting to when I get bad email. There was just such a swell of hatred that was so far out of proportion.
Which was weird, because let me tell you, Bill, for a long time, I mean, everybody that I knew who was into the subject, who knew who you were, I mean, completely thought you were legit and loved, watching you on TV and loved the show. And I mean, we talked about it on radio a lot with the ex co-host that should not be mentioned.
Right, but see, the thing is, you're all real. I mean, you're a real investigator in a real setting and so forth like
God
that.
bless you, Nancy,
I think
for saying that.
well, we're talking about trolls. I think we're talking about people who make a living helping shape the narrative, if I can put it that way. And of course,
Right.
our Martian friend is a troll of the first degree, I'm sure.
He is just a OCD.
I would assume.
Weirdo.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's so much There's so much weirdness going on with that guy. But it's funny that they would target you, though, Bill. I mean, that's odd,
No.
especially when the subject. It's not like they've completely removed this kind of show from TV.
No, but
Yes,
they have.
UFO
They
Hunters got
have.
removed, but
Oh, but-
Ancient
yeah, they
Aliens
have.
is still on.
Here's
The
what's
subject
been-
is still being
Here's what's
breached,
been
though.
removed. Bill can tell you, but that show did, even though it was stupid sometimes, the investigation, oftentimes, they didn't listen to anybody after a while. They started out being very friendly and listening to people in the field, experts in the field, so to speak. Eventually, they kind of went their own way and figured they knew everything. And so it was a rocky road, this thing called research, but it was so real. And I have already been through it with the Eckers and the magazine. It's sort
Right.
of the same way, just like now. We're all new on a new network. And so eventually, as we get bigger, more and more people will try to, just make you feel bad, I think. Like, go away. Because some of us are sniffing around the truth, I think. I really think that.
That's really been my whole goal, is sniffing around the truth. That's exactly what it is. Just trying to find out what the truth is. Which, Bill, going through that kind of dilemma with the show, what keeps you going?
Well,
Yeah.
first of all, the books that the two books that I've done recently about the show, they're done. I mean,
Yeah.
so the things that I'm doing now are like I'm writing the manuscript for the Mickey Rooney biography we're doing. So I'm doing that. A couple of months ago, Hearts of Darkness, which was about school shootings, and it's a psychological study of what's behind all this epidemic. That came out actually last month, and then before that was another book on PTSD and traumatic brain injury in the military, and then before that was Dr. Feelgood. So that's what I'm working on. So I'm not really writing books about UFOs, investigating cases.
Well, here's the thing.
By the way,
though,
the Dr. Feelgood, by the way, that's the John F. Kennedy stuff I was alluring to earlier. That's,
but that was
Yeah.
just that was a book that came out last year.
That was recent, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
the stuff before that.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And no, I just thought
That's
of
why
it.
she gets those emails.
Don't be
by the way.
inhibited.
I can't bear the sound of my own voice interrupting and stuff. But here's the thing: it's half my show when we do feature theater. That's the part I don't get. How can I interrupt if it's half my show? And that's what I was going to try to bring up to you guys. Angel, by the way, one of the things that I've been promising, and I'm sorry I'm taking over give me 5 seconds, is
Go ahead.
that I'm going to try to do
4.
some of the heavy lifting on, the mechanics of the show. But
no
I
more
wanna say-
technical talk on air, though.
No, but this is not technical. This is a little preface to say, no matter what, I would like you to still be part of the show as a verbal person. You know what I mean? If it's all like there's no dials to turn, how will you be part of the show?
Well, we'll figure that out when we get to that road. Don't worry about that for now. Let's not talk about technical stuff and
No, it's not technical. Your
being
voice in the
part
show
of-
has become, I think, quite important. As you can see, we're a smooth running team here.
Indeed.
Yeah. So ask Bill.
Indeed. Bill, what do you think?
About what?
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. See?
Yeah.
He's following right along.
Okay, Charles Hall. Now, Charles Hall, according to one of the questions here, he has a millennial hospitality book series describing his encounters with a race of human-like extraterrestrials, the tall whites. And he was part of he was a military man, etc. What do you guys think about they're good aliens and they're space brothers.
There's absolutely no way to confirm objectively any of those stories.
Anything. Yeah.
They're stories. I mean, that's really all they are. And I've heard these things, and I've heard these stories. I mean, Charles Hall is one person. Now I remember the tall whites. Tall whites are supposed to be the helper ETs. So everybody that I've spoken to that has had contact, ongoing, benevolent contact with tall whites or Nordics, they're also called Nordics, I think, but the tall whites, everybody who's had contact with them comes back with the same story. They are our progenitors. We share their DNA. They are here to help us. They are here to keep our planet alive.
Well, here's the thing that the UFO field can feel like a dead end, which is why I keep harping on this conference, this energy conference, because Dolan's talk, he's a UFO guy, Dolan's talk fit in like a glove to this whole new audience that I believe would love every show we all do, because we almost always get to the same thing. So if you've got a nutty case in UFOs talking about tall whites, or you even start with the first one who was considered a nut, and that was Adamski.
Right.
They came from Venus and stuff. There are some people who suggest in this new energy world that all the things we call UFOs are kind of like fantastical creations of this other mind, this other dimensional thing, this world community, this community we're not part of yet, to show
Nancy,
us
I
what's
think
possible.
I think most of it is in all of our minds.
Do you?
Yeah, I think that's mostly what it is. And going back to the tall
I
whites.
hope
for a
it's
second.
not. I hope it's not that way.
Well, listen, going back to the tall whites here, how much of this could be just mythology that people hear about, want to join a community, feel like they're outsiders, and they feel like they fit in this community of ufology.
Okay,
and they come up with these kind of stories and these kind of scenarios.
Otherworldly creatures have been a part of culture ever since human beings began to tell stories.
Oh yeah, this is true. That's in the Bible. I mean, that's 100% accurate.
So therefore,
but
are they?
How much of it is truth? Though,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Or how much of it is truth, and how much of it is mythology that is created, like a comic book, like a story. Just
well,
a fictional
the stories of little people have been around. Thousands of years. Little people, either Feyarias is what they were called, elves, but they've been around for thousands of years. George Washington, when George Washington had his two sightings, both of them in Valley Forge. One was this kind of Blakean vision of, the mother, this white angelic figure. Another was this green floating orb in the forest. And out of that orb, he called them green men. Green figures jumped out of that orb. So, and they were small.
Yeah,
and
what
so
about
there's your
Travis
little
Walton?
green men.
Well, here's the thing. George Washington was also growing weed in the back of the White House and probably smoking a whole lot of pot. So how much of that is accurate?
Yeah, okay, so what about Travis?
Except this took place at Valley Forge.
Yeah,
so
it don't matter. He could have been traveling with the pot. I'm just saying.
Well, they were, because it was their thing.
Took
Everybody
a joint with him.
This is the first time in history it's been prohibited. But listen, guys, what about Travis Walton?
See, that right there, that's a case I believe. See, and not because I've interviewed Travis and I got to talk to the guy, but because of the surrounding circumstances in his case. The fact that there was federal people involved looking for him. There was a manhunt looking for him. They couldn't find this guy anywhere.
Same thing with Whitley Strieber. I would hate to disbelieve Whitley Strieber and then
the
just
main difference is though, the main difference is though, Nancy, is Travis Walton, when he had his experience, he went back to work at his regular 9 to 5. He went back to doing what he was doing prior to this happening to him. He retired working at that same company. He wrote a book. He made a couple bucks on the book in the 80s and the early 90s. They made a movie, which was pretty good, but it kind of sucks because they fictionalized most of it. And even he says that he's not happy with the movie. But this is not a guy who tried to create a cult around what happened to him.
True.
And that happens a lot with a lot of the folks in ufology today. Whitley Strieber, I would hate to think that he is faking any of the stuff that he's
well, here's the thing. He has,
but he is a fiction writer, though. That's another thing.
And he like Linda Moulton Howe have a very tight grip on a good sized community that you pay to join, right?
Right.
And and so they get very prickly if you get and that's I've talked to Whitley and I think, my goodness, I don't know, I think he's on the level. I really do.
So do I. I mean,
yeah.
I do not doubt anything he said. I think.
You could be a fiction writer, and when you are a fiction writer, you occasionally will go into the zone. Everybody has a calling, and when they're doing whatever it is that they're put here to do, they're in the zone.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the thing, Nancy. We're talking about a person again who is a fiction writer.
Yeah.
No different than L. Ron Hubbard.
Right.
And he created his
Whitley
own
Strieber
religion.
is not making a religion. He's charging for a website, but that's it.
He's telling a story, and he's making money from I guess his radio show and his website. So this is
nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong for making money from your radio show. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there's
Whitley Strieber is one of the to me anyway. His story, while is it's a great book, and the Communion story, the movie was great with Christopher Walken, great movie. But it's really a small sack of potatoes compared to everything else that's been going on in the world of ufology. Compared to again the one-armed bandit over in Europe.
Well, actually, we all came into ufology when it was at its dying end of ufology.
It kind of is, yeah.
Yeah, when the 50s were here, the 50s and the early 60s, when people, old guys now who are still around, it was, I'm telling you, you could have a conference and you would make a fortune just because it was so popular. And it became less and less popular. As each of us entered the field, it was less and less popular. But when Whitley did his thing, when he did Communion, this was back when books were still really important, he and his wife, Anne, had such a deluge of mail that's how they started this whole foundation or whatever. Everything came from the fact
because it hit a nerve.
Huh?
It hit a nerve. It hit a nerve with people
that's
who
what
were
I'm
interested. It hit a nerve with everybody who was interested in the subject. Maybe some people that read the book and could maybe relate to it because they were abducted, and some of them might have actual genuine.
No, he's a good storyteller, and in fact,
he is.
It has such a ring of truth. But so is Stephen King, an excellent storyteller.
Yes.
And so that's.
But do we crucify him, though, because he was a fiction writer, and say, well, because you wrote fiction, you could not have gone and experienced this yourself?
But see, here's the thing. Bill can write books on all these other topics, but as long as they're still running UFO Hunters, people are going to ask him questions.
Right.
And every time you turn around outside of the UFO field, as I said, we're doing this health book on this diet. I'm running into, time and time again, another person I was following for the diet is suddenly talking about seeing, again, the tall whites in this case. That's why I thought it was weird. That it's a woman who's, so many weird fields are leading back to this. I don't think any of us can ever really get out.
I haven't heard much
think
on
so
the
either.
tall whites. I haven't really heard a whole lot of
me either
on the tall whites in recent months. But I'm gonna have to do a little more research on the tall whites. But how much of it? How much do you guys follow like the new agey stuff, like the Indigos and Star Seed, Star Child, and all that stuff?
Star Children and Indigos and Crystal Children.
Yeah, all that.
These were stories in the. Dating all the way back to the 80s, right?
Yeah.
We had stories in the magazine about this, about Indigos and Star Children.
Here's what has happened is that, and here's the thing you're going to find out if you haven't found out already. Sometimes the really nice people, the really easy to get along with people, the people who complete an article without a lot of pulling out their hair, are completing an article that's not really, what I'm saying. It's kind of a little flighty. So you put it in the magazine because you've got to fill the space. It's not an excuse, but
it's a filler.
It's what we did. And so, we have had probably one story each, but then you file it away. But here's the thing. Well, I don't think the two come together, but there seems to be definitive proof that lots of famous inventions have been squashed, starting with Tesla. You know?
Yeah, well, yeah.
So,
I mean,
so there's
Tesla was
something.
butchered by the government. What happened with Tesla was laughable.
No, but Bill knows the actual story
No,
about.
I mean, I know the story, but I mean,
Yeah.
in fact, we had an interview with Tesla's granddaughter in the magazine years ago.
She was beautiful.
Yeah, she was beautiful. But the real story is that he wasn't really butchered. Tesla.
He died
if he
broke, though. Like, he was penniless, didn't he, when he died?
Well, he
Yeah.
was when he died because
Yeah.
what he'd done, it wasn't the government. What he'd done was that he was a multimillionaire, and then he made a discovery about the wireless transmission of energy, and radio, and he had gone to J.P. Morgan, who was his benefactor. He was his chief investor, and when he tried to explain to Morgan what a wonderful world free energy was, Morgan simply withdrew his money completely and said, how can I make money if energy is free? Well, Tesla kind of hung on, but when he died at the hotel, first of all, the stories about him were endless, but when he died at the hotel, he thought, after all this, in World War I, that he would get this huge contract from the United States Navy because Tesla had invented the homing torpedo. He invented robots. I mean, if I can go on and on to the stuff he invented. But Thomas Edison was on the naval board and rejected every one of Tesla's suggestions. Then at the start of World War II, here's a guy scrambling for money. So at the start of World War II, devastated by the Depression, the start of World War II, Tesla was trying to convince the United States government that, one, he was the real inventor of radio, not Marconi. The Supreme Court eventually granted the patent to Tesla, not Marconi. But Tesla was also trying to convince the United States that he had invented anti-gravity, that he could make anti-gravity work. And when he died, the Office of Alien Properties, because Tesla was not an American citizen, or maybe he was, but the Office of Alien Properties seized all the contents of his hotel room. After the war, the Yugoslavians, the new country of Yugoslavia, under Marshal Tito, wanted to create a Tesla museum. And we gave all of Tesla's papers from the Office of Alien Properties back to Yugoslavia and the Tesla Museum, except for one set of documents.
Yeah.
Those were Tesla's anti-gravity notes that went from the Office of Alien Properties via the FBI to General Nathan Twining at the Materiel Command at Wright Field. And it was General Twining who was one of the first, besides General Ramey, to get involved with the Roswell crash case.
Wow. So this goes all the way back to Tesla, the whole Roswell case.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
Now,
well,
Go back to my question, though, about the star children and indigos. How does that connect to Tesla? I'm lost.
Well,
the Star Children and the Indigos and all that stuff, and those two things in particular, I think are really great gimmicks to get.
That's
people
what I
to
was going with.
Feel good about
That's why I brought it
themselves.
up.
Yeah,
That's why I brought it up, because I was going back to the whole hoaxing. And then we just got sidetracked with Tesla,
I mean, we've been
which
hoaxed
is
like
fascinating in itself.
Well, we've been hoaxed as a magazine. We've been hoaxed. There's a cover story we have with a woman who said she was abducted, and they took us out for a skywatch. And in fact, that's the one and only time in my life I ever really saw maybe satellites. Who knows? There was a lot of pendulum going on, pendulums over car hoods, and they were trying to call things down. But I think mostly, I've never seen ever any indication that any of that's true, ever. It's always...
Nancy, the object, did you see, was it moving, and then did it make some kind of a weird movement in the sky and then
A
shine
bunch
the
of them
bright light.
formed into a really good-sized cross.
Okay, and did they shine any bright lights, like just sporadically, and then just stop?
Just when the cross got made, it kind of got very bright. It was so
that's the
obvious
satellite.
that you say to yourself, but I think to myself, couldn't it be lasers somehow?
Oh,
Well,
maybe.
I don't think so.
Could be.
Somebody in a car with lasers that you don't even know is there, like parked down the mountain a bit?
I don't think so. I mean, that was too high up for lasers, and even though lasers have a long beam, they have to hit something. They don't just play in the sky. You've got to have something that the lasers hit to make...
See, here's the thing. Because the government has gone to so much trouble to block this topic out of the media, to completely black it out, that's the biggest clue of all. I mean, if there were nothing, the media would be eating into this the way they eat into the superstructure of our underbridges of the country. You know, media looks into everything except this.
Right, because the government has so effectively marginalized it since the
Which means
late
it's not in
1940s.
everybody's mind. I mean, forget.
Well, it's not
Exactly.
only that they've marginalized it; it's also, I think, a lot of the disinformation stuff that's happened, a lot of the hoaxing is it's done by the government itself.
Yeah.
Well, no, but the big no. The
Corso
big thing
said the
is-
government doesn't have to do much. That there's so many people.
Not anymore. Yeah, so many people
Yeah.
are not just doing it themselves. But I think
Yeah.
at
Right.
first a lot of it was government mandated disinformation and hoaxing and stuff. And then of course people just monkey see, monkey do. You know, they got on the bandwagon and people thought they saw that they could make some money off of this, and now you have cults sprouting all over the place. Because look, ufology in a way it is a religion, kind of is its own cult in itself with little sectors in it.
Sort of. I mean,
Sort
but
of, right. It's
but
what
it
it's
can be-
becoming. It's becoming a religion, though, Nancy. It really
well,
has the last 20, 30 years.
MUFON meetings have you gone to, or conferences have you gone to? How many times have you mixed in with the UFO people?
Have not had a chance to go to MUFON conference yet. I was scheduled to go to the UFO Info Weekend, which was going to take place a few years ago with Alan. Here he was supervising the whole thing, and it fell apart last minute. It was supposed to be at Cape Canaveral. They're going to do the last launch of the shuttle, and they're having a whole convention surrounding that last launch. And unfortunately, it fell through. It didn't happen. But that was going to be my first convention in the whole field of ufology,
I can't
which I
wait
am
to-
dying. Look, I'm dying to get into more of going out there and seeing these people live and seeing and interacting with folks, because it is a little bit different when you actually see somebody face to face.
Exactly.
And you can see them eye to eye, and you can see if they're
And you know what? Pretty quickly, everybody figures out who the real people are and who the frauds are. And the real
Yeah.
people are often swamped, and they're exchanging notes. They're taking names. They're getting more information. This is a great way to trade information. The real people. How can having more information hurt you if you're the real thing? But so the ones who are hiding stuff, I think, are the ones that actually have armed guards and lock people into the room. You heard
Now, how
about
much?
that.
Oh yeah, of course. Now, Bill, real quick, going back to UFO Hunters, how much of the stuff you guys do you think that the stuff you guys covered on the show was legit or had any legitimate backing?
That's a good
Well,
question.
everything was legitimate. Even the stuff that wasn't true was legitimate because that was the point of the show. See, everybody thinks the reason that UFO hunters, and I'll say this not for the sake of bragging, but just to say this, there's 30 years or more, 40 years of UFO shows going all the way back to the 1970s, 40 years. And of all those shows, UFO Hunters stands out in a different way from them. And that is because in UFO Hunters, what we didn't do was try to prove that UFOs were real. I mean, it's hard to believe, but that's what we did not do. There was no attempt to prove it. There was no attempt to argue the case for UFOs, only to argue the case for evidence that couldn't be explained. See, we went in the opposite direction. This is why none of the shows, well, some shows will do this, but we went in the opposite direction from UFO shows. Most UFO
but you
shows...
didn't do it. You made people mad because you didn't definitively solve a problem like CSI.
We didn't definitively solve a problem. The whole point was to definitively solve what debunkers were saying Okay, the model for the show, at least to my mind, besides Sherlock Holmes, okay, that was my model for investigation, was A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle. But the model for the show was a show all the way back in the 1950s, starring John Newland. It was called One Step Beyond.
Yeah.
And in One
Angel,
Step
have you ever
Beyond,
seen that one?
No, I have not.
you can find it on.
look it up.
You can
I'm gonna
find
put
it
that on my bucket list.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
find it on YouTube.
Just for the music.
In One Step Beyond, the point of the show was a paranormal show. It wasn't UFOs. It was paranormal. But they tried to go through every single conventional explanation for what was happening in a paranormal case. And in the very end, the last of the conventional explanations fell apart. And they were left with the unsolvable. And that was the one step beyond. And all the stories were true. And so on UFO Hunters.
Said so, yeah.
Yeah. And so on UFO Hunters, because I wrote a lot of them, one of the things that we were doing was that model of going through all the different scenarios for certain kinds of things. And the UFOs that were not real cases, like Maury Island,
and that was a mistake because that was the first show. But
yeah,
at that point, they wanted to do this. They wanted to do the series historically, like starting with the earliest, sighting and move up. But that they quit that right away.
Yeah, but anyway, so we did the Maury Island. Then the next season we did Aurora, Texas. The Aurora aircraft.
Yeah, but you
history.
also you brought new information to the Cash Landrum story.
Right, that was brand new.
You uncovered even the Aurora. You uncovered new stuff with the digging of the well because Pat.
Yeah, exactly. In the Aurora case, everybody claimed the case was a big fraud. Never happened. There was no well on the property.
Right.
There was no this. So we found the real guy, and we found his grandson. He allowed us to dig. We dug the well, so the well was real. At the bottom of the well was aluminum. The aluminum we found did come from before World War II. It was from the 1920s or 1930s. And we found the town historian in nearby Dublin who said that these metal-clad balloons by sportsmen were coming down all over the place because their engines were giving out. Well, that's what happened at Aurora, Texas. A metal-clad balloon hit the rotating blades of the well pump because it was sucking water up of the well pump. It exploded, sending metal all over the place, but the water wasn't contaminated by it. The old judge had terrible, terrible gout, and his limbs were swollen up. That's why. And then the well went dry. So the two things were completely different. The well dried up, so they closed the pipes, dug a new well. He had terrible gout from his elbows down to his hands, and so that was why he was swollen. It wasn't from the water.
Ouch.
And who was the military man who admitted? I think it was during the Janet airplane thing. He sort of admitted that something. He admitted right on camera that it was which case it was. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Well, Janet Airlines would have been in Nevada for Area 51.
No, but you remember the guy you got
the Bullhead Airport, the Bullhead City
so.
Airport in Arizona. Yeah. I mean, the other thing was after the Needles incident in 2008. So we're there. We're in Needles, California. And the closest airport to Needles is Bullhead, because it's right near the Four Corners, right in Nevada,
and what's
Arizona.
The Needles incident? Refresh our
Well,
memories.
that's where this kind of artillery shell-shaped object did what some witnesses, there were two main witnesses, said was a controlled landing on the banks of the Colorado River. And then the whole place was flooded with federal personnel right after that. There were a lot of personnel. And the one thing we noticed was that at the Bullhead City Airport, Janet Airline planes were landing. Janet Airlines is the CIA-owned, the federal government-owned airline that transports people back and forth from McCarran Airport to Area 51.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Right? Okay, so we filmed those lines. Then, for Bullhead City, we filmed a Janet Airlines plane landing at the Bullhead City Airport after the Needles crash. And so the airport manager, who was a retired Marine, told us flat out that he never heard of Janet Airlines. They don't land at his airport. He would know if Janet Airlines landed in his airport. He would know if a jet that big would land at the airport. And sure enough,
right.
We had video of a jet landing at Bullhead City Airport, so we caught the guy in a falsehood about Janet Airlines.
Basically, I think that the show, every case you did, many of the cases are real cases, and you move them forward just a notch. For example, that Japan Airlines thing, which the video, the visuals in UFO Hunters are amazing at how big a UFO was trailing Japan Airlines. They were flying, I think, over Antarctica. Basically, they were taking a shortcut.
Well, they were
delivering wine.
No, they were taking the circle route over the Northwest, over Alaska to go to Japan. It's the shortest route. It's the circle route. And that's when they picked up this object that was tailing them.
Right. And remember, we only need one story to be true. And this sort of story where all the witnesses are trained people and stuff's on radar, etc.
Yeah.
And multiple
sightings it's like I said,
it's
like I said, Nancy, it's just 1% of it is true. The whole thing is true.
Right. And maybe that's all you need is 1% of a motor. But by the by, the reason I keep bringing up alternate energy, all these speakers are saying that that's the reason it can't come out. And it has to come out almost like many, many holes in the dam or in the dike. It has to come up little by little because the energy companies, all the energy companies run the world, the pharmaceuticals. This stuff will hurt their business. Supposedly.
Yeah, to what point, though? Because, I mean, you would think they will adapt to the technology and they would start making money
they are.
with this
That's
technology.
Supposedly they are.
Point.
Yeah, let's go back to hoaxers and ufology and, not talking about James here yesterday, or anything like that, or even the one armed guy from Switzerland.
Skinwalker.
Skinwalker. Let's talk about different aspects of ufology and hoaxing. The Skinwalker Ranch, for example, that's another one. Tell us, Bill. Can you tell us a little bit, or Nancy, tell us about the Skinwalker Ranch for those who might not know much about what the Skinwalker Ranch is?
Well, it's a real place. I think the person who is probably, like the real expert. Well, there's Colm Kelleher and there's George Knapp. They've both been there. They've both they wrote a book together about it. They both worked with, I think, Robert Bigelow on the acquisition of that ranch. Right.
And there's a third one. Remember the one that you know about that's very private. What is that called?
Well, there's one we covered on UFO Hunters that was in Arizona. And
that one is, that one is that one seems to be the real thing, and it's very, very private. But people know about it.
I know what you're talking. No, that's not in Arizona. That's in the Ozarks, and that one is Marley Woods.
Okay.
And the Skinwalker Ranch and the Gilliland Ranch and Marley Woods and places like that really do share this one aspect of they seem to be like a curtain, and on the other side of the curtain is a real.
In fact, oh, there it did it again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Sorry, folks. Let me see if I can get Bill and Nancy back on here. Me now.
I'm here.
Yeah, we took a call there. Dan Harmon called in. Sorry, Dan. I don't know why Skype is doing that, but when you take a call for some reason, it's doing that. Let me add him because he definitely wants to get something off his chest here. But before I get him on the line, Bill, finish your thought, and I'll get Dan on the line here.
Well, no, all I'm saying is that in these three places, they really do act like curtains between our dimension and somewhere else. And the physical trace evidence is enormous, proving that these things are real. And the photographs are enormous, are just incredible. So,
can you also call them stargates? Well,
people have talked about stargates. I keep thinking that they're kind of like curtains to another dimension. So call them stargates because that was the movie. But they're also curtains that are separating two kinds of dimensions, and you don't want to go into their dimension. They come into ours.
Who's the guy from Marley Woods that you interviewed?
Ted Phillips.
Okay, we should have him on the show. Now, here's the thing, because he seems like completely legit. He was a skeptic when this all started, but so many of these stories remind me of the Amityville Horror. Somebody buys a property. They don't know what the heck they're going to do with it. So they make up a story that, they're seeing stuff on their property, and suddenly, their property is a tourist attraction.
Well, right. That's what happened with Amityville. But Marley Woods is just the opposite.
But hold on. My question is, though, Bill and Nancy, with all these properties that are springing up, isn't it kind of convenient to have a little ranch or something like this where people could come out and you can make money off of it, and you could set up maybe props or things to happen to have people believe they're seeing something, they're having a sighting?
Well, I kind of wish you, Angel, if you have the time and energy, and we might try it ourselves. We were talking about it tonight. I think we should all go to this ranch.
Oh, I'm totally down.
Sadly,
for this,
you could come back really like feeling like I was right. It's not, or you could take a walk on the wild side, and I mean,
I'll tell you what. Look, I'll tell you what, Nancy. I'm actually very, very interested in checking out James's ranch. Not because I'm a nasty debunker, as some would call us or call them, because I'm really not. But I am a very curious person in ufology, and I want to know what's true and what's not true. And James seems like a very nice guy. We talked to him on the show yesterday. He seems like a very nice person.
Well, see, he comes highly recommended. You kind of judge people by their friends, and you judge them, thank you, by their enemies. I mean, I am proud of our enemies. And I'm prouder of the people we call friends. And an awful lot of people, that's why I was saying yesterday, although he's saying stuff that seems insane, we don't know what he's gone through. I have not had a near-death experience, and there was someone recently on another show I was listening to who talked about having it. Maybe it was, I think it might have been Rich. I can't remember who, but somebody just recently.
Yeah, Rich had a near-death experience, or he thinks he might have had one.
Yeah.
So it might have been his show that you were.
Or no, was it last night? Was it James? Might have been James. I think it was
James said he did have one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he thinks that was what kind of turned on the psychic abilities, and that's what Travis Walton said. He really believes that they fixed him, perhaps.
But Travis never claimed to have any psychic abilities, and this is.
No.
Well, he hasn't. He never told me he claimed to have any psychic abilities.
Here's what happened. Okay. So we're talking to Travis, and he's on the radio, right? Because we're broadcasting live from the Bucks County MUFON convention, the one, or the Philadelphia convention. It's in Bucks County, and so we're talking, and John Ventry and I get this panel together with Pat Uskert and Travis Walton and Antonio Paris and Anthony Sanchez, a few other people, and one of the things and Tom Carey. So as we're talking to Travis, Pat's interviewing Travis on the air, and Travis alludes to a certain ability that he has that he doesn't use. So on the air, we say, well, what's the ability? He says, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to use it. I said, come on, you can't raise the issue and then not talk about it. Just kind of give us a hint. He says, well, I can make things happen. What do you mean you can make things happen? I kind of can.
He's like the Rain Man.
I kind of can think of. He said, I kind of can think of what's in people's minds and make things happen for them in their minds. And so he said, but it's so troubling to me that I don't do it. And I said, well, did you have this before your incident? And he said, no. It was only when I was deposited back that I began to have this sensation about this ability that I had, and it scared me so much, I've stopped using it. I don't use it.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that story or that aspect of it. But he's never come out and made claims publicly or anything like that he has psychic abilities. No,
in fact, he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to
exactly.
Right.
That's why nobody would know.
You can and real remote viewers say the same exact thing. It's not something they like to fool with. It's like witchcraft or something. It's like there's a force there, and you have to respect the force.
Respect the force. I like the way you put that. Yeah. Speaking of respect the force, let's get Dan on the line because I know he's been patiently waiting.
Nice.
Get his question in
phone
here
call
with you. Let's see if we can get him on the line without kicking us off. Dan, come on, pick up the phone there, and you're on live on Skywatchers Radio. Dan, and welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, Dan.
Doing fantastic. You got a question for Bill and Nancy?
Well, I've got basically, actually more of a couple of comments.
Go for it.
Earlier when I was listening to it, and Nancy was saying that there's an awful lot of people who seem to hate her. Well, I don't particularly hate her. I just get frustrated as heck with her. Again, it goes back to you're stepping over some of the guests. Sometimes it's wonderful, but sometimes it's frustrating just from the sense that just about the time Bill may be getting ready to say something that I find exceedingly interesting.
Do we have anything that is ufology based to ask to them? Instead of, just bashing poor Nancy over.
No, I'm not going to bash her beyond that.
Okay, let's move past that point and let's get into some UFO related. This is a UFO based show, not a bash Nancy Birnes show.
I'm sorry, but I was just commenting on it. That's it.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, the other thing about a lot of the people you do talk about in this, that talk in this field, do seem to are from La La Land, and I have to agree with that. And one of the more interesting ones is Whitney Strieber, which I find very fascinating. In that the last time I tried to listen to him, I just found I couldn't listen to him because every 2 minutes he was hyping his books.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Welcome to ufology, Dan. That's what a lot of
no,
folks
he
in ufology do.
He didn't used to do that.
No, I mean when I first started listening to him. Back when he was on Art Bell and early George Norrie stuff, I mean, he came across as a lot more credible. Now, and I think a lot of these people the problem is that they tell these stories that and they may or may not be true, but if you tell them enough times, the fiction and the reality tend to blend together.
Yeah, except here's the thing, and let me interrupt you to kind of say this.
That's okay. Go ahead. I'm open.
And in fact, you know what? I know that you're going to end up being one of my firmest fans. I can sense it. I can feel it. But anyway,
he's going to be leading the charge in the parade.
I mean,
Nancy Birnes.
I have once you get to know me, you'll be okay. But here's the thing: I spoke with Whitley at a party for a while, a long time. And when you talk to him and he's not trying to sell his books, he is so shockingly smart, and he has had experiences or he makes stuff up. I don't know. He is a writer. But if you look into the internet, if you do some deep Googling, you will find out that he has a very, very, very strange background. And before he wrote even Wolfen, he wrote some horrible serial killer type books and stuff.
The Hunger.
No, one is called Billy. Look it up.
Oh, right. Right,
and people who have really looked into this, people who are conspiracy theorists, believe that he was one of the kids who was used in experiments and stuff because his father was involved. You know how sometimes parents have to give their kids over. We have seen evidence of this. So he has a very interesting history. There's just more to him, I think, than most.
Haven't you found that, though, Nancy? That seems to be like a parallel between a lot of folks like Whitley Strieber, like the one guy in Europe who has his whole mysterious background. Also, it seems to be the common thing where these folks who create these cults around their stories and have books and movies and documentaries, and American people who pimp their stories out to the world. These people all have this mysterious background where they've lived a hell of a life. And some of them are even musicians, and they failed at it. So then they get into the UFO field, and they get a little fame, and next thing you know, they're pumping out music CDs and trying to put their music out there. Dan, we're almost out of time here, and I hate to cut you off there, but any of the last questions or thoughts you want to leave Bill and Nancy here with?
My only concern, and I have everybody there has expressed this concern about where this field is going. I've been following it for some years now, and I have to agree, it has sort of gotten mushy, and there's a lot of cruft in it that it's hard to differentiate sometimes. And I wish we could just get back to finding out whether this is real or not. That's the issue.
Well, I mean, here's the only thing that I can tell you. If you look at all the extrinsic evidence, it's absolutely real. It doesn't mean that every case is real. It just means that there is a phenomenon that's real. We don't know why the phenomenon is real or why we have an explanation for it. But when you see how various aspects of the field, like archaeology, like aspects of psychology, neuropsychology, and history, and the history of documents, when you see all this surrounding the testimony of a lot of people, then you have to say to yourself, well, obviously there is a phenomenon here that is real because there's evidence that attests to it. What the phenomenon is and why the phenomenon is, that's the mystery, but not that there is a phenomenon. Look, when you have President Harry Truman, President John F. Kennedy, President Ronald Reagan, President Jimmy Carter, President Jerry Ford, all saying the same thing about UFOs, they're real, they should be investigated. And even people like George Bush and Vice President Cheney, Vice President Cheney saying that if I received the UFO briefing, it would have been classified, so I can't talk about it.
Right. Very subtle, by the way.
When you look at that, when you look at that, when you look at that, you know the phenomenon's real. The question is, who knows the why and the wherefore?
Right.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, at this point, there really is no debate that there is a phenomenon going on, even if it's all in our mind.
Well, what do you guys think all of John Lear, for example?
Well, who wants to take that one first?
Not me.
See, I think there might be some truth to what he's saying. I think
so do I.
Early in, when he first started, I think he was telling some truths. It just seems like it, and if you look at his old stuff, again, we covered him in UFO Magazine. I found him very compelling, not almost like a person who's telling the truth, knowing nobody's going to believe him.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'll just leave. I'll have one thing to say, and then I will leave you and enjoy and saying I have enjoyed tonight's show a great deal.
God bless you. You're the one.
Actually, back in the mid-'50s, around 52 or 53, one night my parents and my brother and I actually had an encounter outside of Sherman, Texas, and that's where it sort of got me involved into thinking about all this stuff over the years. And for a good 50 years, I have not talked about it because there's just nothing to be gained from it, and people look at you sort of pretty weird at times. Well,
can you tell us what happened?
Well, we were driving home from my great aunt and uncle's house outside of a little town called Van Alstyne, Texas. And it was probably about 8 or 9 o'clock because we had to be back into Sherman, Texas.
Guys, I hate to cut you off, but we're almost completely out of time. And I know this is going to go for more than 2 or 3 minutes.
No, it'll be finished. But my father pulled over to the side of the road and stopped on a country road. Says, "There's an airplane landing in that field over there," and we stopped and just started.
And it was a UFO.
And it came down about looked like 50 to 100 feet and just stood there, changed colors a couple of times, and then sort of slowly rose and took off again. And there was no sound. It was just a light, period.
A light. Dan, thank you for calling in. Guys, we have to cut him off. We got to go. We got to go.
That's why we do this business.
That's why we do what we do. Got to go, guys. Listen, speaking of John Lear, guess what? He's going to be on Dark Matter Radio Network next on Hyperspace. So everybody, please stay tuned for John Lear on the Dark Matter Radio Network. For my co-host Alan, for Bill and Nancy Birnes, great guest. Thank you for being on the show tonight, by the way.
Sure, our pleasure.
Especially
Thank you
last
for having
minute.
us.
For our overlord, Mr. Keith Rowland, I am Angel Espino. This is Skywatchers Radio, and we will be back next week. Same Skywatcher channel, same Skywatcher time.